Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to an episode of Nuggets News. Well, today we're continuing our Evil Elite series where I show you the rabbit hole goes. I've been talking about how things are going to continue to get crazier and crazier as we head towards January 20 and Trump's inauguration. We've had multiple terrorist attacks, very interesting 60 Minutes interview with an alleged Massad agent. But I want to start today by asking you guys a question. How did you go over Christmas and New Year's with friends and family when these topics in conversation as it comes up? Because there's definitely a great awakening happening, but everyone's at different stages. And it's important to remember the 5 stages of grief as people's reality gets shattered and that cognitive dissonance kicks in. Your ego doesn't want to let go to everything that you believed was true for so long. But unfortunately, the reality is very different in a lot of ways, or the managed reality that we've been fed through mainstream platforms and the media for so long now. So let me know in the comments below how you went with those conversations and topics when they came up, and if you noticed a shift from last year. But let's get into some local news first. So this is crazy stuff here in Australia, where they're now seeking individuals to take part in these trials, healthy volunteers for these genetically modified influenza viruses, and how we can make different vaccines against this stuff ahead of time. Would you want to be part of these trials? And why does it seem that Australia is just such a test bed for this stuff? I think this one's even crazier. So this is the Office of Gene Technology in Australia reviewing this application to release genetically modified mosquitoes in Queensland. I think there's only 30 days for submissions to come in against this from the government. So as Craig Kelly says here, what could possibly go wrong? This is another Bill Gates invention. You can read more about it here, but the company, these Ossitec mosquitoes, it's already been trialed in an African village, and now they want to release these in Australia. And why are we playing God and tweaking these, the genetics of these things and whatnot? It just seems so crazy to me that the public is just so unaware of this, and yet it's about to be pushed out. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This is Bill Gates' Dr. Peter Hotez, who's been talking about we've got some big picture stuff coming down the pike starting on January 21st, the day after Trump gets in. They're talking about these different viruses, mosquitoes transmitting viruses, disease in the water, and so on. So it's important to stay calm as they try and roll this craziness out. I do think that a lot of this is going to be stopped before it actually gets pushed, but it's so important to be aware of what's really going on. We're already seeing these mRNA vaccines make their way into the food industry, different farmers calling this stuff out. They want to stop this direct to farmer. They don't want to let you grow your own food. This is really an attack on our nutrition and our immune systems, and an attack on being healthy, an anti-human agenda that I've spoken about for so long now that they're pushing on us. This was another interesting one if you haven't heard about it. Bill Gates owns the patent to Henrietta Lacks, who was a deceased black woman, and she had a deadly form of cancer, and they used her cells to help make this fake lab-grown meat, and the family sued and actually won. Well, so they settled with biotech. So all this stuff is the type of thing that's happening under the table in the shadows that the mainstream media refuses to report on. And obviously we've been warning about the next pandemic, and they're going to use the same playbook, and hopefully more people are awake this time. But the CDC confirmed the first severe case of the bird flu in the United States. So as we know, the gain-of-function research has been going on in this area for a long time with the bird flu. The Biden administration signs contract with Moderna for mRNA bird flu vaccines, and as Ian Carroll sums it up here, I really just hope that people don't fall for all this again. Exactly as the way it started last time, China declaring a state of emergency and hospitals overwhelmed, all that type of thing. It's really important to look into this further, think critically about it. I want to give a shout out to a couple of Aussies. IMA, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This song really went viral of hers. I think she lost her contract, whoever she had at the time in the industry, but she's really calling out all this stuff to do with the virus and the media, and more people seem to be becoming truth seekers and freedom lovers, which is amazing to see. Another Aussie journalist who's been calling out the origins, which we weren't allowed to speak about for so long, of COVID, and now the truth many years later has come to light, even though people were trying to tell you this at the time and we were censored. We weren't allowed to talk about it. So we should be questioning these things that stand out. Why excess deaths at 80-year highs in Australia and 100-year highs in New Zealand. And we can have a look at here. This is the ABS data. And we can see, COVID hit in the start of 2020 and 2021. So why are these excess deaths exploding and continuing to trend higher in the years after, when it's no longer a real threat? And why are the countries that didn't take certain actions and push certain mandates doing so well, and their excess death rates are the same as beforehand? We need to start asking these hard questions. This was another interesting study that came out. Researchers studied the baby teeth of children with autism and found higher levels of metal in them. So, we need to say, well, what is it? Where are these heavy metals coming from? What countries have these? What populations don't? Why has autism gone from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 30 now in the US? ADD, autoimmune diseases, all these things. Why, as a Western population, are we the sickest population in human history? And this is why we need radical reforms, and hopefully we're going to get some of those with the likes of RFK and the Trump cabinet. But let's see what comes. Actions speak louder than words, and that's why I'm really waiting for January 20th. Okay, this is a good chart I just wanted to share below here. Re-questioning everything, going back down the rabbit hole. As someone that was a pharmacist and plenty of friends who were doctors, we didn't get taught any of this stuff at uni. So this is the rates of measles, which had declined 98% before the measles vaccine was introduced just there. Okay, this is a good little podcast from Andrew Huberman, who's been... A lot of you will be familiar. He was the one that really kicked off a lot of the sauna craze and the ice bath craze and people getting into their health. Very successful podcast a couple of years ago. But this was an episode he did saying that just one serving of canned soup for 5 days caused 1,000% increase in BPA in urine. So these forever chemicals, these microplastics, it's all part of, the system in the West that is really making us so sick. Okay, so some countries have started to push back against these agendas while others are still enforcing them. And Denmark became the first country to enforce farmers to pay a flatulence tax for, cows farting. Now, I spoke about Bovier in a recent episode, and I posted that on my socials because there's been a lot of people upset in the UK and people boycotting any of the products that have that in it. But people weren't aware that this got rolled out in Australia a year ago. And there's no labeling requirement for that. So you've got to do your own research to find which countries are using this, what companies are using this, and is it in the products that you're feeding yourself and your family. Swedish government here scrapping all these Agenda 2030 goals, which I think is absolutely great. Meanwhile, in other places in Europe, we've seen these replicating RNA jabs that spread to everyone around them being approved in Europe. Pretty scary stuff. Donald Trump's obviously been against all of this for the most part. He's certainly not perfect, but talking about how the United States will withdraw from the World Health Organization and these other non-government organizations that want to sit above all these different countries and answer to no one and dictate policies rather than the local elected officials. And there's the idea of self-sovereignty and having free choice and free will to do what you want. Okay, so Romania, this is one that I've touched on before, but this is mainstream media headlines. A pro-Russian independent wins first round of election. Now, obviously, this has been annulled. So the Romanian Constitutional Court annulled the first round of presidential elections, and they cited things like Russian interference. Kind of reminds me how Trump wants peace with Russia and he's been talking to Putin, and then all the Russian interference in the 2020 election, all that stuff that got turned out to be completely false. So if you don't know the backstory here, Romania's president has been calling out these evil elites and what's really going on behind the scenes. So it's no surprise that they don't want to let him get into power. We've continued to see more and more of this child trafficking stuff come to the surface, and it's really been trending on X, on Twitter this week, starting to get picked up more and more by the mainstream, which is good to see. But this is just horrific when we hear these stories of hundreds of children being captured. We've seen this in multiple articles and things that have come out over the past year, but they tried to recapture these children, which is just crazy. obviously the main topic that got trending this week was everything that's been happening in the UK and the way that they're punishing parents that were trying to rescue children or find the perpetrators when they were being let off. And it's actually the children, the underage, that are getting in trouble. Like this is just complete, as I've spoken about, satanic inversion, the opposite of what's really going on, and the opposite of justice is what's happening. So the decision not to hold a national public inquiry is a disgrace. And this is where citizens are getting really upset. In Australia, people and local governments are demanding a COVID inquiry, and it keeps getting blocked by those in charge. And it's the same here in the UK with this topic. How on earth can you look into all this and find that hundreds of thousands of kids are being targeted and groomed, and these horrific crimes against them, and it just gets labelled far right or conspiracy? We know this stuff's true. It needs to be investigated. Meanwhile, the UK seem focused on putting people in prison for making social media posts, or in this case, causing someone else anxiety, or posts that could do so. Just absolute insanity. People don't trust the government because, with all the Epstein stuff, I keep talking about how this is the tip of the iceberg. And why hasn't anyone been named? Why hasn't anyone been sent to prison? Why isn't this being investigated? Hopefully this comes on January 20th when Trump gets in, fingers crossed. But these people are getting, all the people that are involved with this New World Order stuff are getting medals of freedom. You can't make this stuff up. This is WikiLeaks revealed an email from Hillary Clinton talking about the best way to help Israel is overthrow Syria. Number of countries that this has all been coming for decades, and well documented about how they want to overthrow all these countries in the Middle East, and it's all trying to drag the rest of the world into World War III. And it's really a small group of evil individuals that are pulling the strings and radicalizing these different religions and groups. Most people don't want to go to war and die, okay? Most people just want to be left alone. They want the governments to leave them alone and stop all this propaganda and, stoking the flames and dividing us on every issue. This is a great interview here with Tucker Carlson interviewing Jeffrey Sachs, talking about how Obama wanted the CIA to overthrow different governments. Look into this stuff more. This is a great thread here by Pete Santilli, talking about all the different things that have happened since 2012, false flags, ISIS, and who funded all these different groups. And yeah, if you're not familiar with all of this, please read into it more. This is really a good meme, and memes are such a good way to wake people up and get this information out there. But, I've covered the Diddy stuff. I spoke about how it was all related to the Epstein stuff and Hollywood, but this is the big one that's going to come out, I feel, in the coming weeks. Those are the really high levels of government that were involved in all this stuff. And Elon Musk tweeting about it this week, he puts tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of eyeballs on these topics when he tweets about something. If you haven't seen these sort of clips before, we've got Secret Service agents talking about the evil done by Hillary Clinton and these laptops, Hunter Biden's, hers, all this evidence that hopefully is going to come to the surface soon enough. And Elon has been demanding full transparency for everyone involved, Hollywood, all the blackmail stuff we saw from Epstein, who looks like he was probably a Massad agent as well, the Clinton advisors, Diddy. Hopefully it all comes to the surface soon. And they're talking about several thousand hours of footage that they've got here that's enough to put away all these guys forever. So hopefully justice is served. And we obviously know people like Mel Gibson, Elijah Wood, lead actor in Lord of the Rings. There's been so many actors now come out and talk about all this satanic stuff, the pedophile stuff, these Masonic plots, and what's really going on in Hollywood and with the elites. This was another great interview with Tom Homan, with Tucker Carlson. He's talking about the number of children that have been trafficked into the country and missing. I've spoken about this a number of times. There's plenty of great docos about this now as well. And hopefully we do get all this under control. This was a Russian leader that was assassinated. And again, if you look deeper than surface level, this all ties back to Ukraine, the biolabs, and the trafficking of these children through Ukraine. And he's been calling this out, and he was recently assassinated. And this is probably the toughest pill to swallow in your great awakening phase, realizing that this stuff is real. Very difficult to comprehend. It's uneasy, it's disturbing, but unfortunately it is very real. So if you're not familiar with this, go to the platforms without censorship like X, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, and there's plenty of great docos on this topic as well. All right, so moving on. Let's get to these terrorist attacks and these 60 Minutes interview here. So this was with a supposed Massad agent. Massad is the intelligence operation within Israel, similar to America's CIA. Now, obviously, there's close ties between the CIA and Massad, but he's talking about how we create a pretend world. We're a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors, producers, the main actors, and the world is our stage. So keep this in mind as we look to these crazy events that are unfolding that just seem too unreal to be real, but this stuff is happening, and I think it's part of it is trying to wake people up. I think part of this is they're trying to create this environment where they want people to question things and look into it more, because some of the things that have been coming out in relation to these, there's just so many dots, and there's no coincidences, guys, when you get the number of things that are happening and the number of dots that are being joined. So this is the New Orleans terrorist attack, 10 killed, 30-odd injured, plowing into a car. And there are a lot of similarities with the Cybertruck explosion outside Trump Tower. So think about the symbology here alone. Who are the two most influential people in the world at the moment? Elon Musk with the Cybertruck and outside Trump Tower. There's plenty of different videos of this. And the Anon community got to the digging straight away. So let's have a look at some of the things here. The common denominator, all three here, is Fort Bragg. So this is one of these headquarters for psychological warfare. A lot of you would have heard about MK Ultra or brainwashing or programming, split personalities. Call it what you want, but I think there's definitely something here to look into, and this isn't a coincidence at all. Some of the stuff here reminds me of 9/11, where everything is completely incinerated on fire, but somehow they find a paper passport and a paper ID that didn't burn. Nothing adds up here, and as Caturd says here, the BS meter is absolutely off the charts on this one. The Green Beret being a military bomb expert and using amateur explosives happening on the same day, found with a gunshot wound in his head. Tesla trucks can be self-driving. There's just so much about this that really doesn't add up. And obviously all three of these attackers have been seen in BlackRock promotional videos, History Channel TV shows, this type of thing, BC grade celebrities or somehow connected to the elites here in one way or another. And finally, the next day we got this interesting email shared by Sean Ryan, who's become a huge podcaster, YouTube channel. I believe he's done a lot of great work. He's shed some light on some really important topics, but a lot of people are questioning the legitimacy of this email. For starters, there's words here that are underlined in red. When you're typing an email, obviously spell check comes up, but this doesn't happen for sent emails, and we've got the cursor flashing here. So the legitimacy of this, again, I'd call it into question. But what's got people talking here is this statement about what we've been seeing. I covered this in last week's episode. A huge amount of, call them drones, UFOs, UAPs, whatever it was, these anomalies in the skies all across the US. And he's talking about how these are using graphite propulsion technology. So, yeah, I don't know if this is all another distraction, how legitimate any part of this is, if at all. But, well, let's wait and see as we get more information rolling on this topic. Okay, the other big thing, the big anomaly across the US has been these chemical fogs, or these strange fogs, and people uploading these videos with, different particulates in their dog bowls the next morning after these fogs rolled through. People are saying it's got this burnt chemical smell to it. Some people claiming that it's making them sick. We don't know what it is yet, but these, some places it fell as almost like a snow, and people are picking it up, and it's this lightweight plastic. It doesn't want to burn. It won't melt. It's definitely not snow, but we don't know what this is just yet. So something we'll continue to look into. And Julian Assange spoke about this in 2018, this intelligent smart dust, whether or not these ties into some sort of nanoparticle or some sort of chemical, or we don't know yet. Like as I said, we've got to continue to investigate and question everything until we get to the bottom of all this. Now, Elon's always been a divisive one, and he changed his name to Kekius Maximus, which got people talking. Now, if you don't know what Kek means, been mentioned by the Q movement a lot, and Kek is the ancient Egyptian god or goddess of darkness. So, look, I've said before that I like a lot of what Elon's done. X has become the #1 news platform. Just look at all the tabs here. It's where information is the fastest flowing these days. But I don't like the fact that Elon wants to put a chip in everyone's brain, that we have these self-driving cars and all this digital system of satellites that all ties into all this together. It's a lot of power and control for one man, and whether or not he has come around to a lot of this stuff in the last few years and changed his position. Is he controlled opposition? Was he part of this with all the blackmailing that was going on, and now he is joining the team that are working for good? I think it remains to be seen, but he got a lot of pushback this week when in the US we're talking about importing a lot of Indian talent into Silicon Valley and that type of thing. So we've got to keep an open mind to everything that's going on, but I think Elon remains a very interesting character on some of his opinions that seem very much pro-freedom, and then some that seem very much rolling out these New World Order agendas. So JFK assassinated 60 years ago, and the government refuses to release the files. Look, I know Trump was talking about releasing them and changed his mind, so why can't people see them? Was there too much going on? Was that blocked by powers that were out of Trump's control? Is he going to actually follow through? And like I said, actions speak louder than words, so I can't wait for January 20th if they release the Diddy files, the Epstein list, the JFK stuff, the 9/11 documents. I'm really hopeful that we do get there. And Trump's chose one hell of a day to have his rally in DC, National Popcorn Day, guys. So grab your popcorn. I'm not sure what's going on. The world's getting very, very crazy of late. The lightning struck all 3 of these buildings in the US on New Year's Eve: Empire State, State Capitol, and the Washington Monument. So it's strange times, guys. Question everything. Keep an open mind. Head over to nuggetsnews.com.au if you want to sign up for our free newsletter, all our crypto-based research, as crypto and decentralization is the only way forward to take the power away from the evil elites or our VIP service for our high net worths. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Hit that like button, share these videos around, and I'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.